Well, the 2013 midterm polls have shaped up to be an exciting one. I'm Nancy Irlanda, and this is Elections 2013. Join us tonight for a one-hour special as we paint a picture of what has transpired so far in the 2013 midterm election season. Long before the campaign season had begun, the COMELEC said they would push crucial amendments to the Omnibus Election Code in order to better police candidates' violations, but some didn't like that idea, and that included the highest court of the land. The Supreme Court issued temporary restraining orders, or TROs, against these said amendments. Here's the story.
Towards the end of the campaign, as expected, political candidates were all out to win the positions they vie for. But as the election campaign intensified, violations also abound, and COMELEC was seen to have worked double time in its crackdown on campaign violations. Under COMELEC Resolution 9615, standard campaign posters must measure only 2 feet by 3 feet and be displayed only in common poster areas. No campaign materials must be posted in public structures or edifices, public transport terminals, electric posts and wires, thoroughfares, and the like. But violations still increased. According to the COMELEC, almost 151 cases of election offenses were recorded this midterm elections. The COMELEC has intensified its fight against violators by installing the Campaign Finance Unit that closely monitors campaign spendings. COMELEC has also launched public service announcements through the characters of Boy Bawal and Tina Tama, who teach do's and don'ts of campaign practices. Empowering the so-called netizens, COMELEC also urged the public to report violations through its Twitter account at COMELEC using the hashtag Sumbongmo or Sumbongko. But COMELEC seemed to find its contender against its supposedly innovative policies, none other than the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court. The court and the poll body were clashing with each other. The COMELEC ordered candidates' airtime for political advertisements must not exceed 120 minutes in all TV networks and 180 minutes in all radio stations. Later on, the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order or TRO against it on April 16, barring the COMELEC's implementation. The COMELEC and the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority or MMDA had also attempted to prolong the liquor ban up to 5 days until the election day. But due to another TRO issued by the Supreme Court, the policy was reverted to just 2 days, May 12 and May 13. Under COMELEC Resolution 9688, cash withdrawals of more than 100,000 pesos from banks will be prohibited to prevent vote buying during the elections. But the Palace, Justice Department, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, and other economists opposed this ban as it is against the bank secrecy law and would disrupt the normal business flow in the country. Due to these TROs against COMELEC policies, Chairman Sixto Brillantes couldn't hide his dismay anymore.
The words "epolitics" and "political dynasty" became common words in these 2013 midterm elections. Election watchdogs and social media played pivotal roles that changed the complexion of Philippine elections. Digital space, no longer for netizens, but also has become an instrument for politicians to shape the electoral outcome. Let's watch this.
The Omnibus Election Code authorizes the Commission on Elections or COMELEC to enlist non-partisan groups or organizations from the civic, youth, educational, business, or labor sectors to assist the Commission, educate the voters, and ensure a clean and fair election day. In the last 2013 midterm polls, COMELEC accredited 4 citizens' arms, namely the NAMFREL or National Citizens Movement for Free Elections, assigned to audit candidates' expenditures, the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting or PPCRV, tasked to conduct poll watching and voters' education. And the two newly recognized watchdogs, the One Vote movement composed of Protestant churches, and C-CARE, or Citizens Coalition for ARMM Electoral Reforms, that will focus on the election hotspots in Mindanao. These watchdogs guard the so-called epolitics, or EPOL politicians, a buzzword for these midterm elections referring to politicians placing their names and faces in government structures as a form of early campaigning. But internally, issues of impartiality and probity of these watchdogs had sparked in some occasions. PPCRV as an alliance of Catholic churches and One Vote movement as a group of Protestant churches had been questioned due to their alleged bias in some issues in favor of their religious beliefs.
Well, you cannot separate the body, soul, and the spirit. We advocate, we educate, now we participate. So we have really to get involved.
Electoral process is part of the ordering of society, so there is nothing wrong for the membership of the church, particularly the lay, to be actively involved, even in partisan politics. Provision is principally addressed to the state, it's not addressed to the church. That means the state should never, in honor, favor any church.
In 2010, NAMFREL and PPCRV were rumored to have a silent war because of duplication of duties. PPCRV asked the COMELEC to junk NAMFREL's petition for accreditation during the national elections. Archbishop of Lipa, Ramon Arguelles, severes ties with the PPCRV, arguing that personal interests and questionable reputation hound the said watchdog. He unsuccessfully asked the COMELEC to accredit his archdiocese instead. These watchdogs also cried that the COMELEC leadership didn't hear their voices.
Unlike the manual count, you can really scrutinize every activity of the COMELEC from the time they print the ballot to the time they proclaim the winners. But in an automation, there are restrictions, you might say. Who may review the source code, for instance? In fact, we don't even know if there is a source code to be reviewed. What about all those hash codes? So many things that a citizen's arm cannot possibly look into.
Mock election. At nakita namin yung mga PCOS machine na hindi natatransmit, mga PCOS machine na hindi bumabasa. Ang sabi ni Chairman Brillantes, minor glitches. My gosh, how can that be minor? That's precisely why we have the PCOS, to transmit the result and to read the ballots.
Never change!
Some watchdogs were not recognized by the COMELEC, such as the EPOL Watch, ICE Watch, and the No More EPOL movement. These citizens' arms are at times initiated by cause-oriented groups and ordinary citizens. They were designed to circulate in a very fluid medium, the fabric of social media, to promote their cause. Aside from the usual Filipino netizens who flock the digital age during midterm elections, social media have also been the turf of almost all candidates. Just like in the United States, Barack Obama had revolutionized his political campaign in 2012 through the use of social media. Many political commentators attributed his winning to this kind of strategy.
The source and provider of information, of news, and because we presume ourselves to be interested in news and in gaining as much information as we can, then we know that people turn to media in periods of election, in periods of crisis, in periods of disaster. It all depends on how candidates handle their media projection.
Because it's free, candidates who didn't have sufficient funds used social media to reach out to voters. Teddy Casino, among other independent candidates, flooded social media with his posters and platforms in the hope to clinch more votes. On the other hand, social media had become the place of hecklers and focal battlefield of ideologies and black propaganda. Nancy Binay, for instance, expressed her dismay also in social media against the so-called cyber bullies who mocked her skin color, her 20 years of on-the-job training, and dynastic characteristics of her family. Netizens and gender advocates also reacted when then senatorial candidate Greco Bellica tweeted about the Saba standoff, seemingly attributing being gay to cowardice. In the emerging trend of citizen journalism through social media, the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, also saw potential in utilizing social media during elections. The poll body opened its doors to citizens reporting alleged election-related offenses through its Twitter account @COMELEC or using the hashtag #SumbongMo. Party lists and candidates were summoned for their alleged violations, some even reaching the threat of disqualification. Politicians, through their own social media accounts, expressed their feelings when the partial results of elections came out. Some even conceded through social media. But even after the election is over, the politicians race to who has the highest number of likers or followers, and if these translate to actual votes remain uncertain. According to Gallup, a US-based research firm, only 1 in 5 Filipinos has constant internet connection.
Still a long way to go. More politicians are using it, but not necessarily maximizing it. It would be all about engagement. It would be all about cultivating a spirit of volunteerism online and translating it to real life. It's not necessarily reach and awareness. It's more of engagement, loyalty, and activation.
Thus, for Melinda De Jesus, Executive Director of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility, it's a mistake that some candidates rely too much on social media.
The traditional media is still holding its ground. Definitely. I mean, radio is still probably the best, the reach of radio to the masses and to the ordinary people.
A lesson politicians old and new should learn the next elections.
Well, some say the automation made possible by precinct count optical scan or PCOS machine showed the international community that the Philippines has emerged from the dated days of manual polls. But PCOS machines both in 2010 and 2013 were marred by glitches, placing uncertainty in the minds of many. Here's a closer look at the PCOS machines and their impact on the Philippine election system.
After the alleged massive cheatings and fraud in 2004 and 2007 manual elections, hopes were high when the nation had its first ever automated polls in 2010, using the precinct count optical scan or PCOS machine. In 2010, there were more or less 500 incidents of PCOS glitches. In 2013, history seemed to repeat itself. Doubts from election watchdogs continue to hunt PCOS. PCOS glitches also marred the mock elections COMELEC held in various cities and provinces months before the elections. In Quezon City, everyone witnessed how the PCOS failed to initialize in spite of correct passcodes. Ballots were rejected, and the poor signal reception hindered the results from being transmitted on time.
I'm glad it happened kasi makikita natin, we can study bakit nagkaganon, bakit nagahang yung machine. But as you can see naman, meron agad replacement.
This is actually the first of a series of so many things that's going to happen. So if you're looking for glitches and deficiencies, there's practically none. If there is any, it is very, very minor.
Early on, concerns over the supposed malicious code embedded in the software were raised. The COMELEC released a report from an international independent IT firm, SLI Global, stating that PCOS can operate properly, securely, and accurately. Controversy had intensified when the release of the source code was delayed. 3 days before the elections, COMELEC eventually appeared to the public, showing the compact discs of the source code, casting out worries of alleged digital cheating. The COMELEC software provider Smartmatic had always been at the crossfire of contentions, and the COMELEC was always quick to rescue their partner ever since. According to the COMELEC, there were 258 PCOS glitches experienced during the 2013 elections.
Siyempre, ang laking difference ng 2010. No, kasi remember din natin nagamit yung PCOS machine. So para tayo for the first time gumagamit yung PCOS machine. So mabilis. No? That's the first comment, mabilis yung proseso.
On the first night of partial and unofficial canvassing of the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting or PPCRV, the servers suddenly stopped upon the orders of PPCRV because the transmitted numbers in the transparency server were allegedly too high.
Kunwari ang transmission 1, 100, di ba? Okay. Transmission 2, may 50 na dadagdag. So, dapat 150, right? Pero ang nangyari, ay the data that was sent added the total of number 1 to number 2, tapos dinagdag nila yon sa number 1. Am I making it clear? So, instead of saying 150 sa next count, ang nangyari, in terms of the data that was being thrown to the workstations, kinount ang 100, tapos yung 100 na yun, kinount uli sa second transmission plus yung bagong 50. Kaya naging 250. Essentially, the data was correct, but the formatting had sort of a double count.
Smartmatic immediately corrected the said error in their transmission. Votes counted were reverted from almost 12 million to 4 million, and poll agencies proceeded to counting.
We also followed the series of pre-election surveys as early as the third quarter of 2012 up to the exit polls on Election Day itself. And as familiar names and faces dominate the results 4 days after the elections, one thing seems consistent. Majority of the Senate seats will be occupied either by the so-called political dynasties or will be sporting the yellow ribbon of President Noynoy Aquino. Here's that report.
If there would be one famous buzzword in the 2013 midterm elections, that would certainly be political dynasty. Political dynasty, although not explicitly defined by the Constitution, is determined by its two traits: a horizontal ruling, where politicians of the same bloodline govern in the same political chambers, such as the Cayetano siblings in the Senate and the Arroyo mother and son tandem in the House of Representatives, and a vertical ruling, where a family holds key positions in diverse levels of political governance. The Binay family, for instance, whose father is a vice president, the son a city mayor, a daughter who works as a representative, and chances are a Binay in the Senate's 16th Congress. On the fourth day of canvassing of votes, it's plain to see that results are still dominated by familiar names and dynastic surnames both on the national and local levels. 8 out of 12 leading senatorial candidates belong to political clans. Francis Cheese Escudero is a son of a famous politician in Sorsogon, late Representative Sonny Escudero. Edgardo Sonny Angara is also a son of outgoing Senator Edgardo Angara. Bam Aquino is the cousin of President Benigno Aquino himself. Aquilino Coco Pimentel is a son of former Senate President Aquilino Nene Pimentel Jr. Cynthia Villar is the wife of the incumbent and outgoing Senator Manny Villar. And Joseph Victor J.V. Ejercito Estrada is the son of former President, now Manila City Mayor-elect Joseph Erap Ejercito Estrada. He is also a half-brother of incumbent Senator Jinggoy Estrada. As early as August of 2012, some of these names already appeared in many pre-election survey preferences of the social weather stations and Pulse Asia as senators. There is a minimal movement up to the last survey of Pulse Asia days before the elections. The exit polls of MBC DZRH showed the same names as well, but surprisingly and unseen by many, Grace Poe placed as number 1. And 4 days after the elections, according to the PPCRV's partial and unofficial tally of Magic 12 senatorial candidates, it is 9-3 in favor of Team Pinoy. Back on the local race in Camarines Sur, a Villafuerte would certainly win, even though they fight against each other. Grandson Migs Villafuerte leads against his grandfather Luis for the gubernatorial position and may be proclaimed as the youngest governor in history. In Cavite, Remulias clinched the gubernatorial seat, while Jolo Revilla, son of Senator Bong Revilla Jr., wins as vice governor. In San Mateo, province of Rizal, a Diaz husband and wife tandem wins as mayor and vice mayor respectively. In Maguindanao, Ampatuan and Mangudadatu clans lead in mayoralty and gubernatorial posts. Re-electionists Older Malapitan and Echeverry win as mayor and congressman of Caloocan respectively. And in Zambales, Ann Gordon, James Gordon's wife, runs for mayor against her husband's nephew, James Bugsy de los Reyes. Politics has also become the turf of celebrities turned politicians, but it's not a done deal so far. Herbert Bautista is elected mayor of Quezon City. He was a child star. Multi-awarded character and lead actor Christopher De Leon runs as congressman in Batangas. Husband and wife Richard and Lucy Torres Gomez also try to clinch posts of congresswoman in Leyte and mayor of Ormoc City respectively. Known as Miss Flawless, Angelica Jones runs as re-electionist board member of Laguna. Leading in Camarines Sur as congressman is a former child and teen star, Aga Mula.
Camille Elamia now joins us live from the PICC to give us the latest update from there. Hi, Camille.
Yes, Nancy, the National Board of Canvassers officially proclaims the first 6 winners of the senatorial elections. These are re-electionist Senators Loren Legarda, Francis Escudero, Alan Peter Cayetano, Grace Poe, Nancy Binay, and Sonny Angara. Only 5 were present as the sole opposition candidate. Nancy Binay did not show up. Grace Poe was with her mother, Susan Roses, husband, and 2 children. Legarda was with her father and her son. Cayetano, meanwhile, was with his political family. Re-elected Taguig Mayor Lani Cayetano, Congressman Lino Cayetano, and Senator Pia Cayetano. Sonny Angara was with his complete family led by Senator Edgardo Angara, while Escudero was with his celebrity girlfriend, Heart Evangelista. It was a very festive mood here inside the Philippine International Convention Center Forum the earlier, as after 90 days of rigorous campaigning, the candidates are finally called senators-elect. There are still questions, though, on the validity of the proclamation. So far, 72 certificates of canvass out of the total of 304 have been tallied. Brillantes says this is already enough, as 198 of the 304 COCs are from overseas absentee voting and thus only have few votes. The 6 candidates were proclaimed, but their acquired votes were not mentioned. Normally, the votes attained by each senatorial candidate are mentioned during proclamation. Brillantes, for his part, says no one knows yet the total number of votes each of the 6 candidates got. That's why they were proclaimed alphabetically and not based on ranking. Brillantes says they proclaimed the 6 because the commission is confident the remaining uncanvassed votes will hardly affect their lead in the race. Nancy, when we asked Brillantes why there was a sudden proclamation of candidates, even without complete COCs, the chairman only said it was the media pushing the COMELEC to proclaim winners. There is no finality yet when the other 6 candidates will be proclaimed. Brillantes only says they will do so once they are confident that the uncanvassed votes will not affect the race. Nancy?
All right, thanks, Camille. That was Camille Elamia reporting live from the PICC. Now let's take a look at the latest partial and unofficial tally from the PPCRV as of 5:48 p.m. Poe with 16,303,640, Legarda with 14,908,682, Escudero 14,104,920, Cayetano at 14,097,464. Binay with 13,280,000, Angara with 12,823,229, Aquino at 12,346,321, Pimentel at 11,818,770, Trillanes at 11,364,058, Villar at 11,045,192, Ejercito Estrada at 10,987,493, and Onasan at 10,598,573. Thank you for joining Solar News in our Elections 2013 campaign. We made our vote count. I'm Nancy Irlanda, and this is Elections 2013.